similar to what we did before, we need a path. Let me just minimize that. We need a path, and then once we have that path, we will use the volume temps to store the temporary elements, and again we'll use these XPath elements with the use of the XPath methods to capture the information from the elements. So what we need to do is to find out the XPath. And now we go back to here, and we want to find the path. Oh, not the chart. Just get back to the summary. And I want to find this volume. So just inspect. This is the thin stream that contains these elements, this volume. So what I want to do is to find this table. This is the left-hand side table. So again, we will search the div class and then right-click, copy the XPath, and just put it back to this XPath. And here we go. So now let's print this volume temp to see what we got. Again, remember we want to use the text, and also we want to split. So here we go. You can see this is all these informations on the left-hand side table over here, from the previous close to the volume. So remember, because we just split it with the use with the space. So the previous close that will be 2 elements instead of 1. So of course we can just find out the last 4 elements from this list, and then we can get this volume. And on the other hand, we can also set up some logic. So create a loop. If I find these volumes, and then it will help me to capture these informations. And in my case, I just take the simple methods to get this volume, just the last 4 cells. So let's set up the logic. If there's nothing, return from this XPath. What I wanted to do is to set the volume with an empty list, or otherwise I would like to just get the last 4th element and set the volume equals to this. So this is the approach 1. You can simply just capture these values from this list. The second method is to search these volumes, whether or not there's a volumes, and then right after these volumes that will contain this volumes price. So this seems to me is much more safer, because if I can find these elements, and if I can find these volumes, I will just capture these volumes. But otherwise, if I cannot find these tags, I can handle this error. That means That means if there's any changes in Yahoo in Yahoo Finance on the left hand side table, I just search for this volume instead of specifically to identify this value. So in that case, for this approach tool, I think is much more safer. So if I can find this file, if I cannot find this volume, I'm going to have an empty list. And if, on the other hand, if I find there's such a name for this volume, so in that case, I will just assign it to the corresponding index. So in this case, I will just put this entire list. This is the entire list. Put this entire list under this enumerate functions, and this enumerate functions will help me search for the text that is equals to volume. So if that is the text, it will just right after that the value of the volume is just right after this volume. So if I find this text volumes, I will just index it into the next cell or the next element that contains this volume value. So this is the second method. So this is the second approach. This is the approach 2. And the beauty of this approach is that instead of explicitly identify this value, sometimes it might go wrong. So we will just check whether or not there's such a volume fit over here. And in this case, it will just returns the volume, and I want to check if we make it correctly. So again, just print the volume to make sure that we did it correctly. So I'm not going to print it anymore. So here we go. Oops. Let me see where if the volume. Oh yeah, I forget to break this function, so it keep looping to the next cell. And because for the next cell, if that is not equals to the volumes, and it will just send me an empty list. So I need to add a break. So that will break the entire loop over here. Here we go. And if I go back to the Yahoo Finance, and you can see we have successfully captured this volume. The last things that I would like to capture is the 1 year's target that will be on the right hand side table. And similar to what we did, we need a XPath, and then for this one we will just store the target price in a target terms, because we need to check out the logic. And then let's go to the web page to find the tables on the right hand side, and let's inspect this 1 year's target estimate. This is on the right hand side table, and again one level up to find the diff. This is the diff that we would like to capture. So right click, copy XPath. And this is the XPath that we want to have. Now let's print out the targets temp. Again, we want to split them. Let's print out to see what we got. And let's remove this one. So we have just successfully captured the informations on this right-hand side table. So you can see that that's the let me remove this. You can see that is the market cap, and then the informations all the way down to 1 year's target estimate. That is the value that I would like to capture. Again, there's two approaches that we can capture these informations. And the first approach is to just find out the last value from this split. So this is the last value. So of course I would like to set it to the 1 year's target. This is the first approach. Just capture the informations in the last elements in this list. But just like what I mentioned, to play safe, I always would like to check whether or not this is a 1 year target, and that is the one. If that is the 1 year target, right after that cell, right after that element, we will have the target price. So I'm not going to use this approach. I would like to use a safer way to do that. First of all, we're going to check if we have successfully captured these 1 year's target. So if not, we will just give this an empty list. And similar to these methods, so we'll just loop. We will just loop. This is the target temp. We'll just loop through it. So if the text is equals to estimate, that is the estimated target, 1 year's target estimate, then we'll capture the value. Otherwise, we'll just set the 1 year's targets into an empty list. So we wanted to take a look on the split to see if the text is equals to this estimate. But sometimes right after this estimate, if Yahoo does not provide any target, or the stock companies does not provide any targets on this stock, and then Yahoo will just set it as an NA. So to handle these problems, because if that is an NA, I do not want to capture the value. So to specifically to capture this problem is that if this value is not equals to an 8, and I will set this 1 year's target to this. So I use the I+1 because right after this estimate, this cell, this element, if that is not equals to NA, and then I will assign this value to the 1 year's target. Otherwise, I will just give this an empty list. And finally, let's take a look to see what we got. And I want to print this 1 year's target. And yep, I think I again forget that there is a break. Just to make sure that you break this loop. Otherwise, it will continue to move over here and then set your 1 year's target into an empty list. Here we go. We have successfully captured the 1 year's target. And finally, the latest pattern. We're not going to do anything with this latest pattern. So we have just successfully captured all these informations. So similar to what we did before, we want to create a while loop and store all these informations into the CSV file. The first things that I would like to do is to store all these informations into this informations list. So I need to use this informed as I need to set this informs as an empty list, and I'm not going to repeat myself again. Just to set the timestamp, you can check it back into my previous lessons. So in short, I just check the times that I'm having now, and then minus 12, or depends on the week, because I live in Hong Kong, and US is I'm ahead of US around 13 hours in winters and 12 hours in summer. So for this time, so it's just minus hours equals to 12 to set it as the correct time zone, and then set to this format. So that is the year, month, date, hours, minutes, and then second. And then I just append all these informations into the inform empty list, and this is the functions that I want to use, and these will just loop through all this stock over here. So just need to change it to the stock code. And then once we have all these informations, what I wanted to do is to firstly append the stock price, and then there are 4 informations that I want to capture. So I will use the inform.extend, and the first informations that I would like to extend is the change, and then the volume, and then the latest pattern, and then the one year's target. And again, I will create a column that will store this timestamp, so to make sure that I understand at what times I capture all these informations. And then stop. This will just simply extend to these informations list. Just use the column.extend to make sure that the column is at the very beginnings or at the very left hand side, and then just put everything into a data frame, and then to transpose it to make it to the correct format, and finally just store everything into the CSV file, and also print out all the informations to make sure we know what we got while we are storing the information into the CSV file. And for these two CSV, there are three arguments. The first argument is where you would like to store the file and what names that you would like to set. And so I just use the timestamps and then pass stop data.csv. And this is the append mode. Make sure that it will not override what we have before in this file. So use the append mode, and then there's no header. I do not want to set the header. And one final thing, when you really put it in practice, remember that you want to just create the Chrome driver, or otherwise you will see that there's so many Google Chrome in your task manager. So just remember to just remove that to create the driver. Now let's take a look to see if we have successfully stored all these informations into a CSV file. Nope. So the list object, okay, so we forget to remove this print, and let's take a look to see. Okay, for this price, just change back to the price over here. Make sure that it appends the things that we want. And then for this stock codes, that is a variable instead of a string. And so let's do this again. Excellent. We have just successfully captured the informations and saved everything into the CSV file. So very quick recap, in these lessons we just used the Selenium instead of BeautifulSoup to capture the Yahoo data. The main reasons that why we switched to this approach is that because these span class, the names of this spans continues to change. So BeautifulSoup does not allow us to capture these informations. Therefore, we switch it to the Selenium, which is much more powerful and has more functions. But of course, that is less efficient. In that case, we just switch it to Selenium, and I just showed you how to use the Selenium to capture all the essential informations that allow us to do the plottings later on. So I hope you find these updates useful. So see you in the next video. Bye bye.